Topic 1, Ian as an infant. What did, Sarah, what did you and I notice about Ian in his infancy that now looking back we can say, oh, that was probably Asperger's? Anything you can think of?
I remember him being very difficult with any change, even at 7 months of age. We had a time period where I had started a job downstate and you were still home with the 2 kids, and we had friends that were watching the kids while you had to be at work. And that transition time was horrible, especially for Ian. Just had a real hard change with any time that different people were in the house. We actually settled it down to just 2 people watching the kids so that there wasn't a lot of change, because he was totally disrupted. And the only thing that seemed to help during that time was VeggieTales. Once we discovered VeggieTales, it was like a godsend, because if he was throwing a fit, we could turn on the video and instantly stop crying, eyes fixed. I have a picture of him when he was not even able to stand up yet, sitting, staring, fixated at that show. And it was only that show. That was the only one that had his focus. And he continued with VeggieTale focus for several years until his next fixation came. But that was probably the first thing. Very hard with any change. That was the hardest part for him. And I thought, wow, I have a strong-willed child. But I had more than that.
Yeah, I thinking back, that focus on Larry, and then Larry Boy started to speak. Looking back, I can say, okay, that was probably his first Asperger's focus, where he was just totally absorbed into those characters. And I know even in elementary school, he had a fantastic Larry Boy costume that with the ears and the
that was
helmet
in kindergarten.
and the whole thing, So that was definitely one of them. I think back then, I was thinking back on this, that sounds were a problem even when he was younger. I don't know if you remember, but the one time I almost called the cops because I thought he got out of the house. I went all over the house looking for this kid. It was nap time. I went outside the house. I'm calling for him. I'm looking. Finally, I stood still and listened, and he had crawled underneath the bunk bed to sleep, to take his nap, and he was under there just happy as a clam sleeping away. And thinking back on it, it's probably because it was really dark under there and it was really quiet, and he could get away from any kind of sounds that might wake him up by doing that. I think that really, we didn't realize it at all at the time, but I think it was a sign that he had some Asperger's going on.
Also, before he could talk, he communicated his frustration in a very unique way.
Oh, yeah.
He used to be a headbanger, and he would literally, when he got frustrated, when he was told no or something was not working right, he would just start banging his head on the floor. It didn't matter what the surface was. Wood, concrete, carpet, just bang his head right on the floor.
Yeah.
And there was no stopping that. There was no way of stopping that behavior other than physically removing him from the room where he was. And we would put him in his room and just say, this is not acceptable behavior. You can't do this. And he would then have his fit in his room, but at least I didn't have to watch it.
And, that was, I think, one of the first signs, because Asperger's is frustrating, because you can't get across a lot of times what you want. And that was one of the first signs of it, for sure. How about when we headed into elementary school years? Actually, I wanted to say one more thing about him as an infant. He learned to talk later than Kate and Anna. But instead of doing it a word or two at a time, I remember he did it a sentence at a time. It was almost like it's not worth wasting my time with these few words. When I get to where I can actually say something we're saying, then I'm going to speak. Mm-hmm. And he came right out in sentences at a time, which kind of blew me away, as I remember, because it was way different.
Now, he was still a happy child. He could be a happy child. He had huge, brown, beautiful eyes and would smile and coo and get all the girls going, oh, he's so cute, just like any other baby. So he wasn't distant, or he didn't have a problem with eye contact.
Nope.
Or being held, any of that. But it was mostly when there was a change, or if he was told no, he didn't know how to handle it.
Okay, elementary years. Going into school, what issues came up there? You know, K through 4th, 5th, 6th grade. What kind of things did we see?
Once he started writing, and to the point where you should know your ABCs and all this, and be working on your penmanship real good, he had problems with dyslexia. He would rotate some of his letters. So that was the first thing that I noticed as far as a learning development, that he had problems with dyslexia, which is a family trait. So on my side, so I wasn't totally surprised by that. He did well the first couple of years. He had a couple of friends in preschool and kindergarten that he did well with. Kindergarten was a fantastic year for him. He had a teacher that totally connected with him, that understood him, understood boys, and allowed Ian to be Ian. And what that means is she encouraged him. By kindergarten, his new focus was coming into play, which was Thomas the Tank Engine. We have a fantastic set just waiting for his own kids, because that's all he wanted for his birthdays, that's all he wanted for Christmas, and he loved Thomas the Tank Engine, and it was amazing. Other kids would take their engines and crash into each other. Very frustrating. Mrs. Raby, his kindergarten teacher, allowed him to bring in his set, and he put together the track, and he had certain engines with their cars doing this, that, and the other thing, and he had a story set up that he wanted to tell with his engines, and it was very difficult for you to let the other kids touch your stuff, right?
That, and it's like they don't know what roads and train tracks are. There's a difference. Just because the wheels on the bus fit on the train track wood pieces doesn't mean that the trains can go on the roads.
Everything had a specific place.
Yes.
And it was very hard for you to let them
Oh, yes.
mess with your stuff.
I have fond memories of that.
Yes.
It's like, that's not the way they go. And she's just like, I know, but you have to let them go. And I'm just like,
Other things that from elementary that we noticed, maybe some that
I remember from Atlanta, our elementary school, a lot of like going out to recess and someone from my grade or the grade below me coming up and saying, your brother did something weird today, and we're just like, oh, he's always like that. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, he's just, I don't know. But and always getting these reports from people of things that Ian had done. And I'm like, this doesn't apply to me. But it was always, I just assumed Ian was a bad kid. You're not, Ian, but I just assumed you were a bad behaved kid. And that he would eventually develop, and he would get better. So I was not. There's nothing I could really do about it. I was just like, he's my brother. Okay, he's done another. Okay, but that's all I remember from that. Just getting kind of frustrated with Ian, but understanding that that's the way he is, and he'll get better eventually.
Well, like, I always thought it was cool because the train thing was really cool to me. I liked, because our basement eventually in one of our houses was taken over by trains.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally just trains and some other toys. And it was always cool to go down there and look. He might get mad at you if you touched it, but it was really cool just to see how big it was, and like I couldn't do that.
Now he would want you to play with him,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Definitely.
But
you had to play right.
Yeah.
He was like, "You're not doing it right."
My
I'm like,
world, my rules.
Yeah, we try to like ask questions like, "Oh, what is this?" And you're like, "Duh, it's this," and it's like,
Well, I'm.
and by the time you were second, third grade, you knew all the engines and which cars went with them and what their jobs were.
Their total backstories.
Yeah, the whole thing.
watched all the movies.
And yeah, we watched all the movies and read the books. And I mean, some of them were hard to tell apart. It's a blue engine. Does it really matter? Oh yes, it matters.
Is it Thomas or Edward?
So that was the second fixation. So we went from Veggie Tales to Thomas the Tank Engine. And when I say fixations, the books, the movies, the toys, birthdays.
I'm a natural hobbyist.
Yes, you are. Because every birthday, what do you want to do for your birthday? Thomas the Tank Engine.
No need to change.
No need to change. Why fix a good thing, right?
We went to that park with Thomas there.
Oh, yeah, we
yeah,
went
that
to
was
a historic park called Huckleberry Railroad and Crossroads Village in Michigan, and they had a day out with Thomas.
But the best though was the hobby store over in Alpena.
Mm-hmm.
After the
Michigan.
ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Oh my
Wait, was
goodness!
that
Yeah,
where
we went there all the time, and they had the best stuff.
And-
That was where all the toys were, and there was like
Yes,
a wall.
and you could play with them. Some of them.
That was fun.
Yeah, I always looked at the table and was just like, why do you have so little sets on here? It's just like, and so little characters. Just like, more please.
I need all of them.
Now, one thing that really started coming up in this time was we started to really notice the hypersensitivity that we found out later is an Asperger's thing, but sounds, Ian, and music at this point.
Oh yeah, I used to despise music.
Every kind of music.
Yeah, we'd play music, and he'd just be like, "Turn it off," or sing to it.
Fights in the
Turn it
band
off.
because of that.
Your singing to it still annoys me.
I know, but like,
But you can tolerate it better.
yeah.
And you like certain kinds now. You didn't like any before. We would listen
Correct.
to stuff on the way, and you're just like, turn it off.
Now most of the things I despise is just country music.
Yeah. Well,
But until 10th grade, is that when you actually started listening to music?
probably.
Because I remember here, Home and Careers, where you had to do a report on your favorite band.
I didn't have a favorite.
Exactly. And it wasn't believed that he didn't have a favorite band. He's like, how can I do a report on something I don't have? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like,
What do I do? Can I do like a report on my favorite actor, Mark Hamill? And it's just like, no, you have to do a report on a band. Here, write something about Coldplay. What's Coldplay?
Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
Yeah. Now, hopefully, you guys, the teachers, know my husband's a pastor. This despising of music is a little embarrassing. When he was little, to be sitting in the second or third row from the front and having your child, as someone is singing a special music, doing this.
I remember that. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was great.
What we have found out since is that one of the issues for Asperger's is overstimulation.
Right.
And what was probably happening at that point is music was too much for him to handle, so he didn't like it.
Or somebody wasn't singing exactly on
Yeah.
key. It's not the fact that it's being done; it's that it's not being done right.
Another thing with Ian that really came up was textures and the way things feel.
He loves silk
Um,
so much.
he loves silk, no doubt,
Silk.
Yeah.
but you'll never see him in jeans.
Ugh, hate jeans.
Why?
They don't feel right. How are they pants?
Because they're too stiff, or they just don't feel
I
right.
don't know. They just don't feel right.
And that showed up soon as he was able to verbally tell me, "I don't like these pants." Because when he was a toddler, I had him in little blue jeans. But soon as he got old enough, no more blue jeans.
They're cold, restrictive, and they just don't feel right.
Yeah.
And he would go around when we were younger. He would go around holding on to his silk tag.
Yes.
Suck his thumb all day.
There had to be, if there was a tag, it had to be soft or silky or tagless. The best invention are the tagless shirts. I tell you that. Because otherwise, you could have a meltdown in the middle of nowhere or everywhere.
Rough tags were itchy on the back of my neck.
Yes.
I mean,
Just
what
like-
is
And it wasn't something that he could deal with. And aggravation, that's another Asperger's thing, is an aggravation that to you or me is irritating, is mind-blowing in his world.
Because those sensory happenings are elevated for an Asperger's.
Right.
What for you and I is just a little thing that we can ignore is just a constant pounding
Right.
in their senses that they can't ignore.
But you
Another
know-
one was smells. That kid could smell stuff I could never even get a whiff of. When he was little, and still does. This doesn't smell right. Something smells wrong. What? I don't even smell a thing.
Most of the time,
Your guys' nose were plugged. It's just like, can't you smell anything? No, I got a mucus problem. Well, I smell something and it smells terrible. You're lucky.
Now, one of the amazing things, and we've talked a little bit about it, with the focus and Thomas, knowing all those details. And we shot some home movies and did some different things. And we started talking about movies one time. And you could start a scene and reference it to Ian in a movie that he had seen maybe even once. And he could tell you the rest of it, the rest of the movie, if you didn't stop him. Who said what, where they were standing, who they were talking to. Now he's probably sophisticated enough, he could tell you the camera angles and the fades and the whole works.
Well, like I listen to film scores when I'm doing homework or something, and once I was listening to a Star Trek one, Wrath of Khan, and
Right.
Ian walks in and he just starts naming exactly what's happening in the movie as the music is going, because it was the big battle scene or whatever when he
Yeah,
meets
it was
Khan,
When
yeah.
the Enterprise comes into the system and Khan, aboard the Federation ship that he just took over, is pretending that I'm sorry, I'm going to do it again.
But anyway,
As
it's
you
like,
can see, he
as the
slipped right
music
into it.
as the music's going, he's just like, and camera should change, and he's just like, Khan starts to get up, and then I looked up the scene afterward, and exactly as he's saying, I mean, a couple lines were a little off, but not really. It was the same gist, and it's just going, and it matched exactly with the music, and that just blew my mind. I mean, I can usually tell what scene's going on because I've listened to the music so much, but Ian just came in, and he doesn't, I mean, you do sometimes listen to phone scores, but he just walked in and was like, got this.
Yeah. And enter fixation number 3, which is Star Wars,
Oh yeah.
which still continues to this day.
Yeah.
Batman 2 works.
And
Batman.
Batman.
Batman
Yeah.
was another one.
Superheroes.
So,
Kind of
Sci-fi.
alternated with those two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Star Wars and Batman.
And
That's
Star
kind of-
Trek was kind of like there, but I didn't really focus
That
on
didn't-
it that much.
That didn't make it into Legos though.
You
So.
can't forget Pokemon.
Well, that's because it doesn't have sets.
Pokemon wasn't as big as a
Yeah,
fixation.
but
I think.
it was intense.
Oh, I don't know.
Did you see? He has like a full binder of
hundreds
cards.
of-
Well, he got those.
Well,
given
I've
to
got
him.
at least, last I counted, like 5-6 years ago, there was at least 1,000 cards in there, plus the energy cards and the trainer.
Every time we went to a shop, like we went to the
Oh,
place that
both of
had.
you, you won.
Well, I mean,
Every time we went to
I
Walmart,
wasn't gonna be outdone, but.
That was the first time I learned to swindle people out of their Pokemon.
Oh. Do you remember with the Lilo and Stitch thing where when we had that and
Science
he'd
was
get
a crazy
the little
thing when I was little.
he'd get the little it was like a glow in the dark marble set, but he'd take the marbles and write numbers, and those were the different aliens. And,
Yes.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, they were everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's because I thought it was
And he'd
cool.
wear a lab coat and
Yeah.
I thought science was awesome.
Yeah. And
Still do, kind of.
still, you do still enjoy science. It's just not the same way as school. But so difficulties started in 3rd grade, as far as actual difficulties with school. I think probably because 3rd grade is where the change happens with the way the kids are expected to learn and the teaching
Big
style.
year.
It's a big year and it's big changes, and it was Ian's first full year of bullying. And we had a lot of difficulty, and at this point we had his teacher did talk with us and said you should have him tested for ADHD, and we did. We went to the doctor and went through some of the things, and she said he doesn't have ADHD or any of those type things. She says he has a different learning style. And at that point, we had started to work with a lady in our church who worked specifically with dyslexic kids. So we did some training with that to try and help, because spelling was awful. For all the memory that this kid has, I don't know if you have ever memorized your multiplication tables.
Kind of.
Kind
but
of,
not
but
really.
not
Like,
really.
if I sat down and I had to do it, I'm sure I could do it, but that's what a calculator's for.
Right. And that's an Asperger's thing. Why do something if there is definitely another way to do it? What's the point? You would not know how many times I heard, what's the point? In sitting down and making him do his homework the way that it was supposed to be done. We had a lot of work together over the elementary years of trying to get things done. It definitely took a lot more work. Had a hard time staying focused in the classroom. Small things would distract, would irritate, and he would totally miss whatever had just been taught. If there was somebody humming,
Tapping a pencil.
rocking back in their chair, or doing something that was against the rules, that's a big mind blower for this guy. It would totally throw him off track, and he would miss. Had no idea what the homework assignments were. Didn't know if this had been asked for or not, and so that became a real struggle. We worked really hard with the planning books and writing down what was due for that night and working on homework, which took hours because he didn't see any point in it.
And for myself, I didn't always react the best. I didn't understand where he was coming from, because school by and large came easy for me and I enjoyed it, and I didn't have the single focus things going on that he did, and so I was like, what's the matter with you, dude? Come on, this is learning, this is what you do, this is how you do it. Work the system, do what you're supposed to. And I was asking him in some cases to do stuff that he just wasn't wired to do. And once we learned about Asperger's, I had to go back and rethink a lot of that attitude that I gave him as a dad. And, I'm still working on that. But
What are some of the difficulties you had in elementary school, like at Lewiston?
Let's see. Math definitely was a thing. I remember when we were first doing like big things where it was just like a sheet of paper and you have like time constraints. That's the thing I hate. Because it's just like, I have to do all of these in this amount of time. And it's just like, and I remember one time during one of these tests where I'm just like, not another one of these. And then the teacher's just like, it's okay, just do the hardest ones first, and then it'll just leave the easy ones for last. And I'm just like, I'll trust you and try that. And I'm just like, the hard ones, I don't know, how is this working? And then by the time I just finally clicked and switched over, it's just like, okay, I've got about 25% of the page done. Alright, hand your tests in. I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I remember when, like, that whole English course changed, and then I'm just like, cursive? What is this? What else was there?
How about dealing with people?
Oh, people. Yeah, I guess that was a thing.
This is when I started getting reports. I didn't get like reports.
Like, I
until
can
later.
remember mildly actions I've done to people. Like, I remember one time a girl was bothering me, and I mucus spit on her shoe. And then there was another time when
Why?
somehow I was...
Why did you do that?
I don't know. She was aggravating me, and I did it and ran away, and she stopped bothering me.
I mean, it worked.
Okay.
Well, there is
We
worse.
would-
I remember one time I was drawn into helping pants a girl. I got called in for that, and I apologized. And now I realize just how bad that was.
now, we had rules with the kids that they weren't supposed to call other people
And
names.
she was mean.
They weren't supposed to curse somebody out. They were supposed to go talk to the teacher if something was going on. And Ian would stay within those rules. I mean,
Most of the time.
almost all of the time, unless something was really terrible. But those rules didn't tell him necessarily what to do, so his mind would come up with things like sliming kids to communicate, I don't like this. And that's, I don't know, that I would assume that there's some Asperger-y aspects to that.
Well, I would certainly think that not understanding social cues, I think that would fall in that. Understanding what is and isn't socially acceptable.
Like, if I wanted to, I'd just lay down on the floor right now, but I know that you're not supposed to do that, or I could just, like, lay in one of your guys' laps.
Right.
I mean, that's something every kid goes through. Not at the beginning, not knowing what's right and what's wrong. But I think other kids will pick up visually by seeing, oh, my parent isn't laying on the ground currently, so that means I shouldn't be laying on the ground. Or picking up, okay, everybody's not talking, so I shouldn't talk right now. Or being specifically told not to do it and then remembering it and applying it to other situations. But that doesn't, people with social disabilities or with issues like that are not going to be easily going to pick that up. So
Right. They're slower at it.
yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Everybody.
What about while you've been here? Who's your favorite teacher or two from Odessa?
now he's making favorites.
I don't really have favorites.
If I said Mrs. Wood,
She was nice.
and why did you enjoy her class?
because it was history, and I was at a point where I could actually assimilate that information better than most. And, history was interesting, and it was at a point where it's just not like, name all 50 states, and just getting like 2 right out of the 50, and then just being like, alright, what's next? Where it was actually just going back and learning stuff, not just another slap on.
Not pointless
Something.
facts, but actual things.
Yeah, I was actually learning stuff.
Okay. What about her teaching style? Her classroom.
Yeah, it was up front. It was controlled.
And that's important to you?
Yeah.
To have the classroom controlled?
Yeah, because I didn't really enjoy it when you had, lots of people talking at once, when it was just like, come on, let's just focus on this. And it was at a point where there was actually, something in return, where it's just like, if you're good on Friday, we'll watch a movie. And, it was, it wasn't exactly like just a movie. It was somewhat interesting, deep movie, like, what was that? It had the guy that played Jordy in it. It was...
Oh, Roots?
Yeah, Roots.
Yeah.
You guys remember Roots?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, when we watched that, and it was actually interesting, and people wanted to watch it.
So you liked having a reward system kind of thing?
Yeah, it actually kept the people in line, and it was interesting, and it sort of gave more of a point to the whole thing, instead of just being like preparing just for preparedness sake, and just to like go brain dead during the important tests or whatever.
Yeah, tests are not easy for you, are they?
No.
So you don't like classes that just teach for the test. You like classes that have substance.
I'd like to learn. We're here to learn. It's just like, okay, geology, rocks, learned all this already. It's boring. I'm on the ceiling now.
I want to go back to elementary school with Anna. You said you remembered about 3rd grade, Ian in 3rd grade or 4th grade.
Yeah.
And that's when you started getting reports.
I started getting reports, but like Ian and I were really close at that point, so I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think he was a bad kid. I just thought he was weird. And at school, I didn't really hang out with him a lot because I didn't see him a lot, I guess. We had different interests at that point. Like, he would do different things while I went to the tire swing or something like that. So, but I didn't really view him as a bad kid. I always saw him as different. Like, he would do weird things, and I wouldn't get why, but...
Now, as you might guess, moving here was a big change for the whole family. Certainly was for Ian. And that's when, thanks to the school, we had Ian tested just to see what was going on at mental health.
It was like how long ago?
That was after 7th grade.
Okay, so
it
seventh grade,
it wasn't when we
grade.
first got here. It was a couple of years
No.
after we got
No, it
here.
was between 7th and 8th grade.
Before we got here?
No. We moved here, he was in 7th grade.
Oh, okay.
He started 7th grade here. And at the beginning, when 7th grade started for him, we were like, all right, Ian has finally clicked. We have got this, because he was rocking his first marking period.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the review stopped, because the school district that we came from pushed really hard. And so all 4 of the kids were actually ahead when we got here. But when that first marking period ended, then we started seeing problems with the classes and that sort of thing. And by the end of the year, we had had enough problems socially in the school that, like you said, we were encouraged to have him tested, and we found out Asperger's.
Yeah, I remember right now, like one of the first few days that we were there, I remember one of the older kids walking by stops and asks me, hey, have you ever put a mushroom on the end of a pencil and shoved it up your butt? And I was just like, what No, why would you do that? That's stupid. And then he just like walked away, and I was just like,
What
What?
just happened?
what
That's
kind of
really weird
idiot
for
puts
anyone.
a mushroom on a pencil?
That's what
That's
you're
what you're
questioning.
Now
That's what I thought. It's just like the stupidest thing. It's just like, what?
Now, I would suspect that this probably brings up something that Ian and I have gone round and round and round and round and round about for years. And that is the way that Ian walks. We found out, honestly, you won't believe this, but that is part of Asperger's.
The tiptoeing,
The tiptoeing.
walking on your toes.
Because it's the least stimulus on your foot, which is very sensitive to pressure. A lot of Asperger's people walk on their tiptoes. We didn't know this. For years, I'm like, dude, you gotta walk like a guy. Got a heel toe in. I'm giving him all this. What is the matter? What's
But
going
I don't
on?
like it. It feels weird.
Well, now
It
you
makes
stomp
me
up the
stomp.
stairs.
Yes, now you stomp.
Yeah.
But that was something we found out was related to Asperger's. And once we had from a professional this Asperger's, mild Asperger's diagnosis, it really changed for me how I perceived Ian. Because many of the things that I had struggled to understand with him, I did. The sensory overload. The how come you're not catching on to what's going on around you at school? You know, why are you not seeing these things? This was Asperger's. Why can't you just block out that noise in the classroom? Just turn it off. Well, that was Asperger's. And, my perspective on Ian just really changed. I knew he was extremely intelligent. And I knew that he was extremely creative. I mean, one day, literally in between 10 and 15 minutes, he built a helicopter out of Legos that he could have just about took it onto a movie set and used. And it was not a helicopter kit. It was just, he took parts, went, put it together, and look, I got a helicopter part. And there it was. And he was 7, 8 years old, maybe 9 when he did that. And, that's just not something you do as a kid that age, but he could do it. How about some of the rest of you? When we started looking into Asperger's and talking about it, did your perspective on Ian change? How about yourself, Ian? When you realized that, hey, this is Asperger's?
I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense.
That's basically what my reaction was. I was like, oh, well, that's a reason. I mean, there's a reason now. It didn't really make me go, holy crap, and mind explode. It just made sense.
I think as an oldest, it was a bigger thing. For me, I was relieved because this sounds horrible. I promise I love you, Ian, but as a kid, I was just like, he's a horrible child, and he's not getting better. I just hear all these reports, and my friends are just like, what is wrong with your brother? And I see the struggle of trying to do homework and not getting it, and all these things, and I'm just like, and whenever we go out to social events, he's always doing the wrong thing, and he's talking when he's not supposed to, or he's being rude because he's not looking at the people, and it was embarrassing for me. But now I'm just like, there's a reason, and I understand. He's not just a bad kid. He has social difficulties, and I was just like, okay, now I'm going to protect him. And I mean, I always wanted to protect him, but now I'm just like, there's a reason you can't touch
kill
him.
him while you were protecting him.
I didn't want to kill him while I was protecting him because I knew there was a reason. I mean, he's still frustrating sometimes, Ian, but there's a reason for it now. But I think that also made me, I started to, I was happy that, I wasn't happy. I mean, I was relieved that it was there was a reason for it, but at the same time, I was just like, wow, I've been thinking these mean things about him because I was so frustrated with him, and now it's just like, that wasn't, I shouldn't have done that, but at the same time, now I'm just like, I'm just going to take care of him now because of this, and so I think even though, you know, you don't want to hear that your sibling is going to have trouble for a long time with social situations, which is life, but I think I'm glad now that we know about it. I wish we had known sooner, but I'm glad that we know now.
Well, let me tell you. The dog is blocking the camera. His diagnosis was a good thing. I was glad that he was diagnosed and that we had something to work from and to work with, but I felt awful. 100% awful. I was a horrible mother. I had waited so long to have him tested. We had someone else suggest it, probably 3 years prior, and I did not want to admit that my kid might be like her kid, and refused. In my mind, nope, that is not his problem. And so when the diagnosis was given, I did feel a ton of guilt because we had not pushed harder. I figured it was just, you were the only boy we had.
Yeah.
You were different than the girls, that was for sure. I didn't know, you know. Had we lived closer to our own family, where I would have seen you in comparison with your cousins, then there might have been a bigger push on my part. But I saw brilliance. I knew you were a brilliant kid with the fact of the things that you could do. The things that you can do with the Legos. I'd watch that and go, he's going to be an engineer. He's an engineer who can't do math, but he's going to be an engineer because he's creative. You're a creative genius. You could draw. And the memory that you had, either of movies or things that interested you, you could recall very easily. As far as space. We could get into a long discussion right now, like when we went to Corning Community to do their open house, and we had that talk about colonizing Mars.
Was it Mars or the moon?
I think it was the moon to start with, and then we moved down to Mars. But we ended up with this hour-long conversation in detail of how it would need to happen and what would need to happen to support it, and this is the way to do it. And you're a brilliant man, and I see amazing things in the future. I just wish it would be easier for you, but it's not going to be. And that's what Asperger's, the diagnosis, allowed me to say, okay, so how do we work within the limits that you have? Or, not necessarily limits that you have, but with the learning styles that you have.
Now, and what happened in my mind is okay, we need to teach this guy social stuff. So I'm sure the rest of the kids, and even him, got sick of it. But every time there was a fight between the kids in our house, it was time out. Okay, Ian, here's what you need to learn from this. See the look on her face? That means this. This is why she reacted this way to what you said. Can you see this? And we'd go back and forth and attempt to teach the socialness of his different encounters in the family, in society, in school, church, wherever. And he learned it. Not as fast as, you might expect, but he has learned so much just in the last 5 years that he really does really well. And he does really well most of the time with little kids. they are attracted to him, and he loves them. We went to this Lego thing, and they were supposed to build. They had the opportunity to build cars to go on a track, a gravity track, downhill. And he was building his, and he stopped and helped at least 3 other guys build, younger guys, and 7 to 12-year-olds, build their cars the way they wanted them. He stopped what he was doing, and he helped them build them. And they went on their merry way, and I just thought, oh, this is great.
I did notice at least, like, while I was helping those guys, someone came along and, like, snatched something. I'm just like, ugh.
Come on.
Off
your
that.
car. But
Yeah, it's just like, come on.
Was that really necessary?
but looking back, and now that we're all thinking about this, one thing I remember, like, not being happy at all was when we would do something and Ian'd be like, no, you're doing it wrong. And, like, it wouldn't, sometimes it'd be like, no, I'm not, let me do it. And, like, with Legos, because that's, I mean, a huge thing. But with Legos, a big thing was he would make giant stuff, and either we'd be like, we don't want to play with you, or he'd take over. I had, and I will never forget this, I got my own Lego set, which was a yellow house. It was just a yellow house with people, and, like, it lasted a month or 2, and it got absorbed into his collection. I was so mad. I was like, my house is taken apart.
No, that's
so
the
upset.
difference between Ian and I that I think is going to serve him well, but it's a struggle. He has a strong personality. We did Odyssey of the Mind out in Michigan for a couple of years, and if the group was not instantly generating ideas for what needed to be done, Ian had those ideas, and he tended to walk right into the front and say, this is what we're going to do, and it's going to be done like this. And there was no give and take because of the Aspergers. There was no give and take on this. This is what we're going to do, since nobody else is putting in. Here's what we're going to do. This is the way it's going to be done. And that was the end of the story. Part of that's his strong personality. Part of that is Asperger's. Listen, I've solved the problem. We don't need to think this over anymore. Let's just do it. And that wasn't the way Odyssey of the Mind was designed to work. And it wasn't a good experience for several reasons. But that strong personality, I think, in the future is going to serve him well. And I'd like us, here we're kind of getting to the end, to shift to Ian and the future. He's looking at college. He's got a couple in mind. Doesn't have that new focus yet to know what he really wants to go for, but it'll form, I'm sure. What do we see for Ian's future as he deals with Asperger's as a young adult and further on as an adult from what we've experienced so far?
Well, I'll admit I was a little worried about how he's going to interact with people for a good chunk of when I was here. I wasn't sure, like, is it just here that he's having problems, or with Asperger's, is this going to be a thing where he's going to have problems just interacting with people and being interested in what they're interested in? So that's something I think about, and just, I'm not worried about that he doesn't know what he wants to do, because who does, really? There are only a select amount of people that know what he wants to do. And when he finds it, he'll be good at it. So that doesn't bother me. It's just interacting with people, living on your own.
When, I'm going to go back a little bit here, when Ian was younger, he was very good at talking with adults.
Mm-hmm.
Because an adult could overlook the social faux pas of monopolizing the conversation. When Ian had a conversation with an adult, he was usually telling them something, and they were amazed at his knowledge of the subject. And so they would just encourage that and go along and talk that way. He had a very hard time talking with his peers because he didn't know the interacting so much. And that was something that we did work on socially. Those were some of those lessons that you taught. We would say, okay, Ian, who'd you sit by today? I don't know, some girl. Well, what was her name? I don't know. Then ask her. You know, these are things that you need to do. Ian, when you have a conversation with Ethan, try asking Ethan some questions about what he wants, or
And the other thing we did was tell me 3 things about your day that made you happy. Before you're excusing the supper table, 3 things about your day that made you happy.
Yeah, but we were working on those social skills because that is something that, as you grow, like Katie had mentioned, as you grow up, you learn by observation a lot of the skills. Well, we were very intentional at teaching the skills that he was lacking as far as the give and take of a conversation, how that works. And we have seen great improvement from 7th grade to 12th grade.
Yeah.
Huge difference. And it's noted even by his cousins. He's got one set that lives an hour away and one that lives back in Michigan. And they have said after visiting, wow, he's really changed a lot and he's matured quite a bit, and that's great to see. Looking forward to college, one thing I'm not worried about is Ian will live in a clean room.
Oh, yeah. Hates my room.
He has not the problem that most teenage boys have. His room is clean. He does his laundry. He has this assigned job to clean in the house, and he picks up every day. The things that are part of his routine, he does consistently. Routine is important to him. I think college will be amazing for you because you'll still have to do some of the mandatory stuff, the stuff that everybody has to do. But once you get beyond that, you'll actually be able to study things that hold interest for you. Yeah. And the beginning, where you have the wide things that everybody has to do, that's actually an opportunity to find what it is that you want. And in college, you will have the support to succeed. And I have every confidence that you can do it if you believe in yourself. And that's what it will take. Knowing that your family is here to support you. Is college for everybody? No. And he may find something else that is his passion and is his next focus. And he'll do great with that. But the social aspect will always be a struggle. But as he gets older and more experience, it's rough now watching him. He's discovered the girls. It's rough watching, but he's discovered the girls. And you're trying. And that's what all guys and gals got to go through. How to interact with the opposite sex. And how do you do that? And
don't slime them.
Verbally, they don't like that. But I think the future will be amazing because once you find the right thing, you're just going to blow people out of the water.
And when you get in college and you get in that whatever major or concentration that it is, and you're dealing with other guys that are as smart as you and are interested in the same thing, you have the potential there to really take off and go. And so I think college will be good for that. Again, your room's going to be clean. It's going to be great. If you get a slob for a roommate, it's going to be terrible, and you'll have to change roommates. But if you get another neat freak, you two will rock it. You'll have the best room in the dorm. I've seen a lot of changes for the positive in your interactions with people, and I think that's just going to keep going. And the future is out there for you, and we just want to help you get there. Anybody else have anything else to add?
Well, I think coming from being a college student now, and now I'm thinking of my brother going into that. I think, I think once he gets into his major, he'll really flourish and be able to. Oh yeah, I could just see him really succeeding once he gets into his major. I think the first year is going to be really hard. Because it's hard for everybody socially, learning how to be an adult without an adult around to tell you what to do or to follow. You have to figure out what that is, and that's difficult even for me. And I'm an oldest of a pastor's kid, so I've interacted with adults for a long time. But I think once he figures that out, he'll be fine. And the first year or the first while of having to do all those mandatories stinks. But I'm currently getting into my major this semester, so I'm really excited for that. And I think once he starts doing that, it'll be really great for him. So I think if we go around and just say, say something that, I don't know, you've learned because of Ian, or that you think will be helpful for you later because you know about Asperger's. I think that'd be cool to end it that way.
All right, why don't you start?
Why doesn't she start?
Well, you start, and we'll go around this way, and Ian can end.
No.
I think because I have a brother that has Asperger's, or a sibling in general that has Asperger's, it's really helped me, especially when I took a psychology class and I learned more about it. But you don't realize how many of these things that we do are so nonverbal, and we learn these things purely from watching others, like things you take for granted knowing, but are such a struggle for others. And I think later on in life, when I'm raising my own kids, I think that would be very helpful, because I can go, okay, even if they don't have social problems, it'll be helpful helping them, teaching them how to interact with others rather than just, well, you'll get it because I'm doing it kind of thing. And I think that's really cool to have that inner look because of a sibling that I have.
Yeah. I'm not in college yet, but just from being in high school and interacting with other people, I think because of Ian, I've grown a lot more patient and tolerant of different kinds of people. Like, a couple of my friends, other people might call them difficult or annoying at times, but I don't know. I think it allows me to see where they're coming from and see why they do things, even if it isn't completely, they don't have Asperger's, but I can see, oh, Ian acts like that, and this is why. Or Ian does this, and this is why. Or applying what I've seen from high school to Ian. Be like, other people have acted like this, and this is why they do it. So I think that has just helped me interact with other people and understand people more.
I was named after my great-grandfather, and Ian's named after me. Full name, Edward Ian Ross. He's the 5th generation Edward Ross. And looking back, knowing a little family history, each one of us, Edward Rosses, have had something to deal with. And at first, I didn't like the fact that Ian had to deal with Asperger's. But as I've gone on, I think that I'm proud of Ian because of the way he's dealing with it. I can see strength in Ian, and I'm glad he's my son. I'm glad he's named after me, and I'm glad for what God has ahead for him, even as he carries the burden of Asperger's, because it's an advantage and it's a disadvantage, and he's learning to deal with the advantages and he's learning to deal with the disadvantages, and that inspires me sometimes when I see him deal with some of the stuff and do well.
For myself, it has given me the opportunity to encourage a coworker who had a son born with autism. So it has opened up lines of communication, not just being a person who wants to be sympathetic to someone, but to someone that I can relate to them and say, well, these are things that Ian struggled with, and it's not the same, but it's similar. And when I heard that you had gotten accepted to Houghton, she was right there crying with me. And it was an encouragement to her to know that you can succeed. And with the struggles that her son is going through, there's been major improvements with him. I mean, he's only 4, but it's been an opportunity for me to be an encouragement to other people to have a similar struggle. And I know that when you find what it is, like Kate said, you are absolutely going to flourish. I simply see you being amazing. And I'm proud that you're my son.
You need tissue paper. Your eyes look a little watery.
I'm just glowing.
And like throw over a box.
I'm good. Thanks.
Good.
Social cues. Follow on. What does it mean to have Asperger's, Ian, for you?
I don't really notice it. It's just sort of just like a thing that's there. That you only really notice it if it's just a big thing that happens. But if you don't know about it, you just think it's the way you are. But when you do know about it and you know that what it is, and you know that's a part of you, you're just like, okay. At least that's how it's been with me.
Yep.